Now, disillusioned and disconnected. That's the focus of tonight's angle. All right, someone call Hakeem Jeffries. Alert the squad. With all the other news ricocheting around America, somehow this beautiful nugget got lost in the shuffle. The Democrat Party's approval numbers remain at a low point. Harvard-Harris has the survey, only 37% approved of Democrat performance. This is the worst number for Dems since March of 2018. So, look, as much as the media loves to dump on Trump, the Republicans, demonize Doge and Musk, the truth is, it's the Democrat Party that's on a cliff's edge. They have the legacy media, though. They have Hollywood. They have the federal judges. They have most of academia pushing for them. And they're still only at 37%. I mean, guys, that's Meghan Markle territory. So whatever happens in this Wisconsin race and the Florida race, Democrats just have a policy problem. Now, look at this map from the American Redistricting Project showing states that are projected to gain seats, the green, light green, versus those seats in the next census. All of them are run by Democrats. The ones in red and pink are going to lose seats. So California projected to lose 3 seats. New York projected to lose 2 seats. Illinois losing 1. Texas will gain 4. Florida projected to gain 4. So these are facts, right? Projections, but based on the census. So the Democrats have no one to blame but themselves. Why? Because they could have turned California, it's supermajority, they run it, supermajority in the governor's race, Senate, House. They could have turned it into a showplace. But instead, it's a mess with a $46 billion budget deficit. They could have turned Connecticut, my home state, into a dreamscape for business. But instead, of course, businesses are fleeing there. Who wants to pay those taxes? And if they wanted to show us how they could do urban renewal, I mean, could they have fixed Baltimore? Have you been there lately? And I love Baltimore. If they wanted to showcase their great education, they could have transformed Chicago public schools. But guess what? They're among the worst performing in America. So they did none of the good stuff. Meanwhile, Florida, Iowa, Texas, Tennessee, South Dakota, I could go on, are chalking up one success after another. Economic booms, educational choice, tough on crime policies, all of this popular among working people. And by the way, all of them are things that Bill Clinton used to support. Remember, he worked to balance the budget with Republicans. He was tough on crime, cracked down on illegal immigration, and he didn't have an entire cabinet that was filled with people who hated America. Instead of common sense policies that appeal to a broad base of the working people of this country, Democrats spend their time fighting Trump's efforts to deport the most dangerous illegals.
I call on my colleagues right now to demand the return of people unlawfully taken to El Salvador on that so-called plane full of gangbangers.
Yeah, the liberals obsess over one Maryland migrant who was shipped to the Supermax prison in El Salvador.
What they're actually doing is sweeping up people based upon their appearance and not even going through the basic identity checks and due process.
This guy has no reason to be in a jail in El Salvador. He's only there because of Trump's policies.
Now that screams middle America. Now, not good if it was a mistake, but important to note, that guy was an MS-13 member, as court documents showed. So literally, Democrats spent more time talking about that guy than they ever did about Laken Riley or Jocelyn Nungaray, both brutally murdered by illegals. You want to know why they're at 37%? So somehow the party of FDR and Bill Clinton has become the party of AOC and Jayapal. Now, those two exist for protest. Because I'm telling you, if AstroTurf activism was an Olympic sport, they'd both be gold medalists. Congresswoman Jayapal is inviting you to her resistance lab.
We really need to help Americans understand what happens when democracies fall, when dictators take over. We've developed a curriculum where we help people understand how do you go after the pillars of support? How do you shift allies from being sort of passive opponents to being active supporters of taking down a dictatorship?
A curriculum? Wow, she's smart. I mean, this is all they know, right? They emote, they feel, they're outraged, and when they lose, democracy becomes a dictatorship. That's all you need to know. So they prattle on about environmental justice, the patriarchy, and reparations. discredited theories, and warmed over socialism. Nothing to improve the lives of everyday Americans. And again, nothing screams middle America like championing the cause of men who claim to be women and vice versa.
Part of the reason we're in the situation we're in the first place is because we weren't loud enough to fight for the trans community.
Trans liberation was never going to be won by capitalistic companies changing their logos to rainbow colors for the month of June. It's going to be won how it always has been won, by trans people and drag queens throwing bricks in the streets.
It's shocking that they lost the male vote by how much they did. But look, this is all a joke to JB.
I have to laugh when I hear the right wing carry on about the dangers of exposing kids to trans people or same-sex couples. And right now, it's drag queens reading books and transgender people serving in the military. But tomorrow, it's your marriage license and your job they want to take.
Okay. And the best example of how tone-deaf Democrats are, their opposition to voter ID, which, by the way, is on the Wisconsin ballot tonight, as we just heard from Mike Tobin. While a staggering 84% of Americans support voter ID requirements, Democrats fight it tooth and nail. Everywhere it pops up, rallying to help defeat, at least temporarily, a Republican measure called the SAVE Act, which will require it nationwide. More on that later. New York AG Letitia James, oh, she's a fair one, says the SAVE Act will threaten voting rights for communities of color and women. Why oppose such a common sense measure, though? Because they want illegals to vote, that's why. There's no other logical reason. Elon Musk has said that. Of course, we've known that for many years. We could go on and on. Democrats defending Hamas, Democrats terrorizing Tesla owners, Democrats against parental rights. Robbie, don't worry, we won't tell your mommy that you're now Rebecca. None of this is popular. No wonder the elected Democrats are running to the courts and George Soros to save them, because they're on the wrong side of most issues that matter the most to Americans, yet they're laser focused on defending deviants, derelicts, deadbeats, and drug dealers, and that's the angle.
Fox News alert, the polls are officially closed in Florida's 1st District, where we're watching the race to replace former Congressman Matt Gaetz. A few minutes ago, the AP called the race for Florida's 6th District, Mike Waltz's seat, which the Republican candidate Randy Fine won easily. So if the Republican running for Gaetz's seat, Jimmy Patronis, wins his race as well, that's good news for the Trump agenda. And Republicans will keep their margin in the House, and we'll keep you posted. Well, Spartacus is back, and he shattered the filibuster record. The senator, my senator actually, hey Corey, has been speaking for over 25 straight hours, and no one can figure out what he wants.
Lift every voice and sing. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. You think we got civil rights because one day Strom Thurmond, after filibustering for 24 hours, you think we got civil rights because he came to the floor one day and said, I've seen the light. Let those Negro people have the right to vote. When is it going to be enough? My voice is inadequate. My efforts today are inadequate to stop what they're trying to do. But we, the people, are powerful. We are strong. We have changed history. If you love your neighbor, if you love this country, show your love.
While Spartacus was grandstanding and holding Washington hostage, his staffer got arrested for smuggling a gun into the Capitol. And the media didn't even care because Spartacus was on a roll. He was about to break Strom Thurmond's all-time record. Biden's segregationist buddy was filibustering the Civil Rights Act. What was Booker filibustering? We still don't know. Thun's trying to pass no tax on tips. I guess Booker really wants to tax those waitresses or waiters. So while Booker bloviates, the squad's training street soldiers.
Help me understand this idea of the resistance lab and what you're talking about in practical terms at these events.
Yeah, I mean, what we decided is that we really need to help Americans understand what happens when democracies fall, when dictators take over. We've developed a curriculum where we help people understand how do you go after the pillars of support, not necessarily the person at the top, but the pillars of support, also preparing them for the moments that will come of coordinated resistance, whether it's distributed action or mass action, that people need to be ready for.
Basic training includes mixing Molotov cocktails, proper car keying technique, TikTok video production, chanting, sign making, and how to grow a ponytail and brandish a cane. First, they were fighting for fraud, then for Muslim students who hate Jews. Now they're fighting for MS-13.
I call on my colleagues right now to call off the campaign to impeach federal judges for doing their jobs. I call on them to demand that the Trump administration comply with all judicial orders while appealing whichever ones they want to appeal, and to demand the return of people unlawfully taken to El Salvador on that so-called plane full of gangbangers.
Today, The Atlantic, the same outlet that accidentally broke Signalgate, came up with a real doozy. The Trump administration mistakenly deported a Maryland dad to a mega prison in El Salvador.
What they're actually doing is sweeping up people based upon their appearance. I think Americans, you're going to see, this is not what they signed up for. They don't want their friends and neighbors who are here legally swept up and then said, oops, we're sorry he's down in a deadly prison in El Salvador.
Are you friends with anybody in MS-13? Are your neighbors MS-13? I hope not, because if my neighbors were MS-13 and they got deported, I'd say, thanks, Homan. My family can walk the dog without being beheaded. The White House says this wasn't a mistake.
This individual was an MS-13 ringleader. This individual was also engaged in human trafficking. And I'm glad you brought up this point again, because I would like to point out that if you just saw the headline from the insane, failing Atlantic magazine this morning, you would think this individual was Father of the Year, living in Maryland, living a peaceful life, when that couldn't be further from the truth.
Did the Democrats call an MS-13 ringleader a Maryland dad? I think they did. Mr. Kilmore Garcia snuck into this country under Barack Obama and was arrested in 2019. In a sweep of high-ranking members of MS-13. What was a Maryland dad doing hanging out with MS-13? Oh, I know, because he's a verified member of MS-13. That's what the Department of Homeland Security designated him as. The judge thought Garcia was so dangerous, he denied him bond because he was a flight risk. Primetime reached out to Homeland Security, and they said this: the individual in question is a member of the brutal MS-13 gang. We have intelligence reports that he is involved in human trafficking. Whether he is in El Salvador or a detention facility in the United States, he should be locked up. So the guy Democrats refer to as an innocent Maryland dad is actually a certified MS-13 gang member, illegal alien, and human trafficker. And he's not from Maryland. He's from El Salvador. It's like if I snuck south of the border and got arrested in Mexico City on gang charges, would Democrats call me a Mexico City dad? And just because you have a kid doesn't make you innocent. OJ had kids. Did Democrats call him a California dad? Actually, OJ was innocent, so maybe they did. You have foreign terrorists telling judges, my life's in danger if you deport me. Well, our lives are in danger if we don't deport you. And if you're a terrorist, life's dangerous wherever you are. You chose that life, and you have to live with it. And the administration's designated MS-13 as terrorists, so they don't get the kind of due process Democrats think they do. But lawyers are going to lawyer and rack up fees. I wonder if cartels have American lawyers on retainer to keep gang members from getting deported, because that's what it seems like. These lawyers keep leaking to the media that their clients are innocent, and the media just laps it up and prints it as fact. I've heard more about terrorists being denied due process than I ever heard about Lake and Riley. On the 5, Jessica's been telling me for weeks about a gay barber.
Time magazine was there when the gay barber from Venezuela who had a crown tattoo that said mom was being processed. The gay barber, we talked earlier in the week about the Venezuelan gay barber who is not in Tren de Aragua, who's in there.
Mr. Jose Romero was actually more of a makeup artist than a barber. As usual, Jessica was a little off. Here's Jose posing with makeup brushes. Would I let this guy do my makeup? No, because here's this guy when he was arrested. He's Tren de Aragua, again, a Latin gang that Trump designated as a terrorist organization. When Jose rolls up his sleeves, he's got double crown tattoos on his wrists, a key indicator of gang membership. Homeland Security told Primetime, quote, DHS intelligence assessments determined he is a member of the vicious gang Tren de Aragua. DHS intelligence goes beyond a single tattoo, and we're confident in our findings. Do you trust Homeland Security intelligence agents who do this for a living, or Jessica Tarloff, who I love, but probably just read about this guy, Jose, in Time magazine? Primetime doesn't want to put innocent people in mega prisons. If there's a mistake, and we'll straighten it out. But the people who let 10 million migrants into this country and made 10 million mistakes, they've lost their right to chirp because their mistakes are deadly.
And an illegal alien who was released by the Biden administration into our country was just arrested in Georgia and charged with the horrific killing of Camelia Williams, a mother of 5 and grandmother. The suspect has now been indicted on charges of malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, rape, aggravated sexual battery, and necrophilia, which for those who don't know, necrophilia is a sexual obsession with a corpse. This suspect was ordered to be removed in July 2023, but the Biden administration allowed him to stay.
Necrophilia. Democrats are going to go to bat for savages like that? Sick. Biden caught and released these freaks, let them prey on us in sanctuary cities, gave them all lawyers and hotel rooms, and then lied about it. Here's what a border chief said just a few months back.
I had to release illegal aliens by the hundreds each day into communities who could not support them. To quiet the problem, 2 flights a week were provided from San Diego to Texas. These flights simply brought aliens that would have been released in San Diego over to Texas. Each flight cost approximately $150,000. This was the administration's way to try and quiet the border-wide crisis. Through pressure from the administration, my headquarters became more interested in the fiction that being portrayed in the media and not at all concerned with reality. Each time we asked for help in dealing with a new issue, it fell on deaf ears. At times in San Diego, we had 2,000 or more aliens sitting in between the fences asking to turn themselves in. I was told to move them out of sight of the media.
We spent 4 years sweeping this invasion under the rug. And now Democrats and activist judges are trying to stop us from sweeping them out of the country. These politicians pretend to have empathy, but what about empathy for us?
I'm one of the many victims across the nation of the violent transnational gang, Tren de Aragua, and a former lifelong Democrat. We watched in horror as a few apartments full of migrant families quickly evolved into large groups of gun-toting, military-aged males. Open-air drug use, drug dealers, and seemingly underage prostitutes filled the common areas of the buildings. A young man, who I called my friend, was mortally wounded outside my apartment during a firestorm of bullets, causing thousands of dollars in damages to cars and surrounding properties, by 6 gunmen later identified as Tren de Aragua.
If someone allows wolves into our chicken coop and there's a bloodbath, they don't get to grumble about how I get rid of the wolves. Oh, that wolf you rounded up, maybe it's not a wolf. Well, it's got my chicken in between its teeth. It's a wolf, and we're getting it out of here. Now they're saying, of course, it's racist to deport terrorists.
One of my premises for the book is that every law passed before the 1965 Voting Rights Act should be presumptively unconstitutional, right? But because before the 1965 Voting Rights Act, we were functionally an apartheid country. Yeah. Not everybody who lived here could vote here. Yeah. So why should I give about some law that some old white man passed in the 1920s?
Old white men passed the 22nd Amendment, so if we get rid of that, Trump can run again. A majority of the country backs mass deportations. During the Iranian hostage crisis, Jimmy Carter deported thousands of Iranians. This was done on the basis of national security. What Democrats today are saying makes Jimmy Carter a racist dictator. So if Democrats want to defend the indefensible, be my guest. Have at it. Let's see how far it gets you. Oh, and let's check in on Booker one last time. He's done. He ended at 8:05. That's the record.
But in honor of April Fool's Day, we begin tonight with more insanity. It never ends from the Democratic Party. For some reason, Cory Booker decided to speak nonstop on the Senate floor for 24 hours. No food, no bathroom breaks, no silence, just Cory Booker's performative art at a podium, talking for hours, saying nothing worthwhile. And of course, it's not a filibuster. He's not officially blocking any bill, but he did go on and on and on, all about his hatred of all things. Donald Trump, what a shock. Take a look.
I confess that I have been imperfect. I confess that I've been inadequate to the moment. I confess that the Democratic Party has made terrible mistakes that have given lane to this demagogue. God bless America. We need you now. God bless America. If you love her, if you love your neighbor, if you love this country, show your love. I don't want a Disneyfication of our history. I don't want to whitewash history. I don't want to homogenize history. Tell me the wretched truth about America. Today into tomorrow, I'm going to stand as long as I can. As long as I can, I'm going to stand and read stories like this because you are seen, you are heard. When is it going to be enough? My voice is inadequate. My efforts today are inadequate to stop what they're trying to do.
Nobody was watching. We haven't seen this much bravery from Cory Booker since he referred to himself as Spartacus. That was during the Kavanaugh witch hunt. But when you think the hysteria can't get any worse, well, think again. Last night on MSDNC, far-left Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal promoted her very own training program to teach the American people how to fight back against looming Trump dictatorship that's about to occur. Take a look.
I mean, what we decided is that we really need to help Americans understand what happens when democracies fall, when dictators take over. We've been pretty complacent in America. We haven't had to really deal with this in any real way. And now I think people need to understand what are the lessons from other countries, and working with experts who have studied democratic backsliding in countries around the world and the resistance movements that emerged to take on that democratic backsliding. We've developed a curriculum where we help people understand how do you go after the pillars of support, not necessarily the person at the top, but the pillars of support that allow that person to continue to have power, and how do you shift allies from being sort of passive opponents to being active supporters of taking down a dictatorship.
How to be a left-wing squad lunatic, and not to be outdone on Capitol Hill, Congressman Jamie Raskin, maybe my favorite quote of the year. As usual, making a complete jackass out of himself, and is now demanding that Donald Trump bring back the violent, illegal immigrant Trende Aragua gang members that President Trump deported to El Salvador. Wow, I have a condition. Take a look.
I call on them to demand that the Trump administration comply with all judicial orders while appealing whichever ones they want to appeal, and to demand the return of people unlawfully taken to El Salvador on that so-called plane full of gangbangers.
I'll cut a deal with Jamie Raskin. I'll be fine with his plan as long as the Trende Aragua gang members live in Jamie Raskin's house with ankle bracelets. We'll have more on these gang members coming up with Senator Ted Cruz tonight. But while Raskin is most concerned with the rights of criminal illegal aliens over the safety of American citizens, his colleague, well, she's in the news every day, Jasmine Crockett, is focused on America's far-left activist judges now abusing their power in a desperate attempt to thwart Donald Trump's agenda. Today, she just couldn't believe that Republicans would dare criticize federal judges. That is, until Congressman Darrell Issa reminded her about her plan to impeach Justices Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito. Take a look.
The problem that we have right now is that if we continue down this road, then we will not have a rule of law, because we have people that are currently serving and they're saying things like, ignore the judge's order. What it means to have law and order in this country is that you follow the order and you go through the appeals process, even if you dislike what the judge did. Thank you, and I yield.
And I'll yield back to Mr. Issa. Mr. Issa, you had a question for me, which I'll yield to you now if you want to.
Now that there's no time left. Thanks,
I'm
Eric.
happy to entertain it.
You're good. You're good at that, but I'll take my own time. I'll recognize myself. And I'm going to note that when Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, or AOC as we know her, filed articles of impeachment on Justice Thomas and Alito, Ms. Crockett was one of the co-sponsors along with Mr. Cohen, both members of this committee. It does seem interesting that when the shoe is on the other foot, everyone is self-righteous.
Wow, pretty great minor reminder. Oopsie daisy, sorry about that. Also, remember, top Democrats even supported court packing, all in an effort to all but eliminate the judicial branch of government. But of course, they now love judges who use nationwide injunctions against Donald Trump with regularity. Now think about it. One far-left unelected judge representing a lower court gets to stop a duly elected president, in this case Donald Trump, and a policy nationwide even before that case is adjudicated. That is a nationwide injunction. This never once happened before 1963. George W. Bush faced only 6 nationwide injunctions in 2 terms. Obama, in 2 terms, he was subject to 12. But during Trump's first term, there are a whopping 64 nationwide injunctions, and then back down to 14 under Joe Biden. So far, in just the first 2 months of his second term, President Trump has already eclipsed that number with 17 nationwide injunctions. This is just more Democratic lawfare, more weaponization of our justice system. This needs to be cleaned up. And while Democrats in Congress, they scream and they yell and they make fools out of themselves, this is the real resistance to Trump. They're using unelected judges. What they can't win at the ballot box, what they can't get done legislatively, they run to judicial activist judges, acting as kings, even blocking staffing decisions in the executive branch of government. At one point, a judge seemingly barred the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, viewing files at his own Department of Treasury. And, you know, is this not insane and totally unconstitutional? As Senator Grassley pointed out today in the Wall Street Journal, quote, Article 3 of our Constitution tasks the judicial branch with resolving cases and controversies, not making policies. According to a story in the Wall Street Journal, many of these injunctions also break what's called Rule 65C, and that states that a party seeking an injunction needs to put up a bond to cover its costs. Well, these bonds are not optional. They happen to be mandatory, but were not applied to these nationwide injunctions. That invalidates them. Now, Senator Grassley, he is pushing the Judicial Relief Clarification Act in the U.S. Senate that would limit district courts to resolving the cases only between the parties before them and make their decisions immediately appealable.
Control yourselves, or I'll have to ask you to come over. Happy Tuesday, everyone. So today is April Fool's Day. It's when I tell my writers they're getting a huge bonus. The White House is cutting down a 200-year-old tree that was planted by Andrew Jackson. Spectators were horrified when it turned out to be John Kerry. Accidents will happen. On Sunday night, President Trump deported more gang members to El Salvador, including child rapists and convicted killers. It's all part of a bigger plan to make El Salvador more like Times Square. True, you know. President Trump says he invited longtime critic Bill Maher to the White House as a favor to his buddy, Kid Rock. Kid Rock returned the favor by showering.
Well, not going to get him on.
Yeah, burn that bridge. While at the White House, Trump and Kid Rock announced they're going to fight ticket scalping. Did someone say scalping? Asked one woman. Drew Barrymore says Mr. Clean makes her uncomfortable because he's so sexual. Wow, Mr. Clean makes her horny. You better keep her away from this guy, huh? Pennsylvania town painted curved road lines down a residential street to curb reckless driving, although one driver felt perfectly at home. SpaceX just launched a rocket mission to the North and South Poles. It's being led by Chun Wang, a Chinese billionaire who plans on dropping off a stack of menus.
Oh, racism would say. It's funny because it's true.
Pete Hegseth has ordered that the standards be the same for both men and women in combat. I know. Meaning men will now have to bring a sweater in case it gets cold. The WNBA is celebrating a Trans Day of Visibility. The transgender community said, great, now no one will see us. And finally, Chipotle is giving away $1 million worth of buy one, get one free burritos. In a related story, Jerry Nadler's dry cleaner committed suicide. All right, filthy.
Love Chipotle.
According to Variety, movie theaters are contemplating letting people smoke pot and text while enjoying a movie. And why is that? Well, these days, theaters are as empty as Kamala's medicine cabinet. True, it's never really recovered from COVID, and the idea of sitting with strangers to watch a movie, well, it seems as foreign as the men I hire to cradle me while I nap. So the theaters are trying everything to get people back in the seats, including reclining seats, alcohol service, fine dining, and now pot smoking and texting. But it is funny that they think weed and texting will bring you back, since those are two things you can also do at home. But there's one thing you can't do at home that they overlook: make better movies. Which is a lot harder than saying, hey, let's attract more rude, smelly potheads. You know, the people a smart industry would try to keep out of their place of business. Seriously, welcoming texting potheads in a theater, that's like a restaurant saying, hey, we don't need a new chef, we need more salmonella. But such remedies are easier than admitting the truth, that the product sucks. Disney will lose hundreds of millions on Snow White because they were more concerned with being woke than being watchable. Plus, it doesn't help that the new Snow White thinks she's Joy Reid with hair. And if this is what Disney did to Snow White, can you imagine if they do yet another reboot of Cinderella? $10, it's Prince Charming who puts on the glass slipper because it matches his transparent thong. Hollywood thinks we're idiots for wanting exciting movies with relatable heroes. So instead, they gave you a musical celebrating a transgender drug dealer. Emilia Perez got 13 Oscar nominations and sold about 13 tickets. But you gotta admit, getting neutered helps you hit the high notes. Movie theaters can throw in all the goodies they want, but it won't help if the movies suck harder than the view on a pork-flavored lollipop. Rather than make movies people want to go see, they offer crap that actually makes the experience worse. And you know what that reminds me of? You guessed it, the Democrat Party. Instead of approving the product, they keep appealing to their worst customers. Even the New York Times admits it. The rag put out a scathing rebuke of the party, saying they're in denial of their 2024 election loss. The Times, of all places, even says they moved too far to the left. Hell, that's like Chris Christie telling you to lay off the donuts. But rather than try to correct their descent into absurdity, they embrace more absurdity. Instead of admitting their colossal error, it's just more fabrications. In this case, they decided that Elon is a Nazi. Okay, but didn't he used to be your hero? You know, it says something that the Dems can expect its mob of supporters to turn on a dime, which they do. So how could the party be so confident the mob would go from adoring the king of climate change to wanting him hanged in the town square? Well, like the film industry, the Democrat Party hold an arrogant disdain for their customers. So much so that it can push stupid ideas and assume their customers will just eat it up. The Democrat mob are no different than bit actors willing to perform whatever script you give them that day. They get paid for the work, and when the clock hits noon, they're gone. It could be a protest against cops, fracking, Musk, it doesn't matter. Just supply the signs and the paycheck, and they'll picket their grandmother for going as Pocahontas for Halloween in 1940. It's so like smoking pot or being allowed to text in a theater. The Democrats' latest moves do nothing to address the unsolvable problem within the party. Their movie is one that no one wants a ticket to, because in this film called Life, they're the villains, and there will be no sequel. Let's welcome tonight's guest. His kids love to send him photos of their mom's new boyfriend, actor, writer, comedian Jamie Lissow. She flies planes and rescues Great Danes. Financial analyst Hammer Super's like, Of all the smart asses, she wears the best glasses. Host of Kennedy Saves the World podcast, Kennedy. And he's the reason for drawbridges. New York Times bestselling author, comedian, and former NWA world champion Tyrus. Jamie, you're an amazing dad, a loving husband, and a talented comedian. April Fools! You're none of those. Why do I do this to you? Do you think pot and texting is going to help the movie industry?
I think it's such a horrible idea, and I think it is a great analogy. That's such a great analogy. The Democratic Party, at no point, they just make excuses. They never take responsibility. That's like the key number one to life in politics, is to take responsibility. Even with my, my ex-wife situation, there are times I can look at myself and go, what could I have done differently? I could have not found out she was sleeping with that guy. Like, that's on me. That is on me.
What role did you play?
You know what I mean? That's something I could have changed. And like the movie theater thing, if you're gonna text and smoke weed at the movie, maybe we didn't want to go to a movie tonight.
Yes.
Like if I was like, hey, let's go mini golfing. It's great. You can bowl during it. Like we would just go bowling. And I also have a problem with, I don't like people chewing. I don't like distractions. And I feel like the more weed there is, the more snacks there's going to be. I was in a movie theater recently, and the movie was called Don't Breathe. It was a horror movie. Right. We let you lot of tension and stuff. Right when it starts, guy next to me sits down with nachos. Swear to God. And I don't normally say stuff, but I go, I can't handle the chewing. And the guy goes, you have a disease. And I go, no, I just can't handle it. He goes, no, it's called misophonia. Have you ever heard that? Yeah. He goes, you're like oversensitive to chewing. And he was like, nah. And I was like, is it possible that nothing is wrong with me and you have eat like an animal's disease? Horrible idea.
Nachos in a movie theater.
Disgusting.
That seems like the thing I do before killing myself.
Right.
You know? Depressing thought, it'll never happen. Heather, is the challenge of the film industry, which you know something about, in the Democratic Party kind of similar?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. You look at CNN and NBC, the latest approval rating, the lowest in history for Democrats, down around 28% right now. So maybe they should be smoking. Perhaps that might help them. And they're blaming inflation, things that they're saying are outside of their control. Well, no, it's an open border policy. It's soft on crime. It's transgender athletes. That doesn't resonate with the majority of the American people. So you have the new DNC chair, Ken Martin. He's saying, no, our messaging is right. No, your messaging is wrong. It's not about connecting your messaging to the people. You have to change your policies. So I think they have a big challenge ahead, and maybe they should go to the movies with Jamie.
His message should be, our message is wrong.
Right, because it didn't work.
Yes, and then everybody go, yes, we agree with you, and then their numbers go up.
Yeah, 100%.
I totally agree with the Democratic message.
Yeah.
I am a genius, Kennedy. How did I come up with that so quickly?
I don't know, but we need to tap your brain for ideas like they do those maple syrup trees in Vermont.
Oh, it gets so sticky all over your hands.
So gooey.
It's called sap, I believe.
I thought it was just maple syrup.
No, it's originally a
Is it maple sap?
Look, we are going off topic here.
Oh, no, that never happens here.
Do you think this pot smoking and texting is a good idea?
No, I'm with you. If I was stuck in a movie theater, that's like a nightmare. That's like one of those nightmares where, you wake up and you're in college and you're taking a full load of classes and it's 2 weeks before finals and you can't drop any of the classes. Like being stuck, I'm all for freedom to put whatever you want in your body, but being stuck in a closed room for 2 hours with a bunch of inconsiderate stoners, that is my worst nightmare. Like, I would want to take a handful of pills at that point. I thought that until I heard they serve nachos in movie theaters.
You know what you made me think, Kennedy, which is people shouldn't, one of the best arguments about not going to college is if you don't go to college, you don't have the missing college dreams. You don't have the dreams that you have of missing college. If you don't go to college, you will never have those nightmares because you can't dream about something you never had. Tyrus. Oh, I have a good question for you, Tyrus.
Oh, here we go.
Usually I just okay, if you could fix the film industry or the Democrat Party, which would you pick and how would you do it?
Well, they're one and the same. So you could...
Trick question.
Yeah, you could... You could fix them both by them getting the activists out. That's the both problems. You have activists in movies and you have activists in the Democratic Party. And the thing is that they don't have a following.
Yeah.
So that's why they're always 80-20. It's always 80% common sense and they're 20% is what they're standing on because they have individuals who are disturbed. And I'm tired of them stealing ideas from other cultures. Listen, we've been smoking weed and texting in movies for generations. Like this is like, you're not going to take, no one will ever complain about the brothers are in here. How do you know? Weed and texting and yelling at them. Now we can't identify who the problem is anymore. And when white people take over something we do, they always go too far.
That is true.
You know what I'm saying? Another thing is so what if somebody wants to break out a pack of Marlboros at the movie theater because you're smoking? You know what I'm saying? It's a terrible idea. You're so right. I used to love going to the movies. I still go with my son because that's kind of our thing, but my daughter's like, we don't want to go. It used to be you would go to the premiere. Like when a Marvel movie was coming out, you would be there Thursday at midnight. Christmas was everyone went to the movies because why? Because they were awesome movies.
Yes.
And they were good. And none of the stars pissed you off on X for 6 months. You didn't have De Niro running around like an idiot to where any movie he's in now you don't want to watch. They pissed off, in their wokeness, they pissed off the group that buys us. The woke don't buy anything.
No, they're cheap bastards. They don't have jobs.
And you're like, we don't want you. So,
yeah. God.
Not to mention, the lines for food is slow enough.
Yeah.
Could you imagine a bunch of high munchies in line?
Yeah.
And the workers are doing the same. Can you, what do you want? I don't know. What do you want? Everything looks so
They would just have to dump food from the ceiling, like big buckets of
food. And then they're paying with quarters and nickels and crunched up dollars. Nobody wants that at the movie theater.
God, I miss going to movie premieres as a kid.
It was a cool thing.
Yeah, I remember that. Staying up until midnight when it came. Sophie's Choice.
Yes.
Amazing. Yeah.
You
had a strange childhood, Gutfeld.
All right, we must move on. Up next, a third Trump term.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.